USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veterans' stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
I come from Brooklyn, New York, an Irish and an Italian family. I had uncles. They all served. The Irishmen all went in the Navy, and the Italians all went in the Army. I don't know why, but that's the way it happened. I was just 20 when I graduated from college. Now this is at the early part of Vietnam. So Vietnam wasn't the defining transformative event it would become. And so I deferred a law school admission I had, and around Christmas time, found out I was going to be drafted in March. So I came home, and once I realized I had the draft to contend with, I decided that it made the most sense for me. I'm a beach kid to begin with, and a boat guy, to join the Navy. And I went up to Newport, and that's where I was commissioned. I went to Navy OCS in Newport. We were, I think in World War II, they called them 90-day wonders and names like that. We would say to the Annapolis graduates, we did in 4 months what you did in 4 years. And we came out with the same commission. I was at the last small class at OCS in Newport. The following month, there were 60, and then a month after that were 120. So the war was, at that point, still quietly being built up for without anybody being told what was going on. My orders came, and the orders were to report to a World War II class LST. Those are the big ships you see in Normandy with the bow doors that roll up on the beach and the tanks roll out. Well, the Pentagon had developed a plan to take 4 of those to Vietnam and make them mobile river patrol bases with 10 river patrol boats and 2 helicopters. The ship has a big flat deck, room for 2 baby UE helicopters, and the tank deck was converted into machine shops and fiberglass shops, everything, to service 10 or 12 boats. It was a big, lumbering, 325-foot, slow hunk of steel. But we could claw our way up a river and park in a reasonably safe spot, hopefully, and there we had all the features of a base. We could fix fiberglass, we could make hot meals, we could treat people medically, we could do all those things. So we were a mobile base, but we didn't rush anywhere because we couldn't. You will see the boats we had in the movie Apocalypse Now. That's the fiberglass river patrol boat with a machine gun on the bow, a machine gun on the stern. The boats were disastrously designed. Very thin, unarmed fiberglass, highly, highly vulnerable to small arms because they're just lightweight fiberglass. And the engines were water jets that were tested exclusively and extensively in Lake Washington and Puget Sound and sent to a river that looks like the thickness of a milkshake. And so the water jets were endlessly jamming from mud. We were in principally 3 different rivers for lengths of time. These are all part of the Mekong Delta. The Mekong Delta is bigger than the Mississippi River Delta. It drains all of Southeast Asia. There are literally thousands of miles of waterways. People who created this particular task force and this particular concept really had no idea about the Delta, how it behaved, what the physical conditions were, what the population was like, how it earned its living, and the idea that a high-tech country like the United States could go to low-tech Vietnam and achieve any measure of control over these vast, weird waterways was ridiculous. There's just that much river. I have believed since the day I understood my orders that this was a mistake, that it would not work and it could not work, and very sadly I was right. I came to like and respect the Vietnamese people. They were, at least in my part of the war, confused and terrified and uncertain and fearful for their families and their children. But I think my country got it wrong. You know, as an officer, you don't sit around bitching. So we didn't talk about that. We didn't talk in those terms. It was sort of implicit that this was not working very well. And as we experienced losses, everybody had to find a rationale for feeling that what we were doing was worthwhile. And that wasn't always easy. I finished the tour on the LST as the ops officer. Experience being third in command on something that big. They made me an exec on a towing and salvage ship. We're in the Pacific, we pulled some ships off the coast of Vietnam, sported the carrier task force. We chased the Russian trawler away a few times, things like that. That was fun. I liked that part of the Navy very much. It was ragtag, the service Navy. We barely wore uniforms half the time, and we were never in any danger. So I did that. That was another tour. So I'm credited with the second Vietnam tour, but that was a vacation after the Delta. I describe coming home by the end of '68. I felt like I came from Mars. I didn't know anything. I didn't understand popular culture changes that could have happened. So much had happened in such a short period of time. While I was overseas, Johnson abdicated. Martin Luther King was killed. Bobby Kennedy was killed. The convention took place in Chicago, and the nation elected Richard Nixon, who ran on the promise to end the war, to win and end the war. But what else happened? Music changed, everything else was changing. And I was mostly away for all of that. I also learned, and I think this is true of most of my cronies, that I made people uncomfortable. That I was from that war. The worst were people of my own age who I made uncomfortable. And you're sorting out all of the rest of the fitting back in stuff. Plus having been, you know, a branded drug-addicted, baby-killing generation that was losing a war. So it was, I didn't know where I fit at all. And I went for an interview at a newspaper upstate. I was thinking I'd get a newspaper job. And it was an older reporter and a couple of young kids. They were so awful to me. Like they had already decided I must be an asshole because I think it's some Vietnam guy who wants to work here. Are you kidding? Like that kind of attitude. I think all of us had the usual difficulties of re-entry after a war experience, but I think it was especially hard then. And it was my generation that was condemning, without knowing me or anything about my experience. I came home, I went to law school, got married, had children, family, career, a lot of career in government. The experience in Vietnam, the entire experience, was an absolute lesson in the consequences of politics. And in this case, where, in my judgment, the process went off the rails. The country made a mistake. The first play I wrote that I cared to show anybody was a Vietnam-based story. And I think for any of this discussion is worth anything, it's to understand what we're doing now. Very sadly, I watch this 20-year mess now in the Middle East, where we apparently learned none of the lessons of Vietnam and stumbled, blundered, perhaps lied our way in to another war that we don't understand, where notwithstanding our technological superiority, we get our asses kicked all too often. This was that experience for me.